Happy Thursday, folks. How's everyone doing today?
Hey, doing good. How are you?
Doing all right. Danon, how you doing over there?
Doing.
Sounds like a affirmation of life.
Yep. I'm alive and that I can be grateful for today.
That sounded dark. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm all right.
Okay. I'm
More
glad.
all right today than I was last week, but I'm all
Have you
right,
been,
you know?
have you been sick?
I have, yeah.
Oh, bless. I'm sorry. I will send you virtual soup
Jory, are you bundled up because you're cold or because you're not feeling well?
because because I wish I was a hobbit.
Okay, that works too.
Yeah, I'm always cold.
I mean, we had 90s here yesterday, and today is barely breaking 70.
I would be a like a lizard that warms oneself on a rock. That's what I would be.
Yeah, doing the dominance push-ups. If you're not familiar, lizards do this funny little thing where they will do what look like push-ups, and it's to assert dominance with the other lizards.
So I know exactly what you were talking about with the push-ups, but I didn't realize it was a dominance thing.
Yeah, it's to tell all the other lizards this is my space.
Oh, hell yeah. Do some dominance push-ups.
Yeah, it's good, right?
Yeah.
This is my rock. I'm getting
My.
warm here. You go find somewhere else.
Yep,
Get,
that sounds just like me.
get your
Yep.
own rock.
I'm glad to meet a fellow lizard. I'm also always cold, but that's part of why I live in Las Vegas.
You're the smarter lizard. I live in Boston.
Yeah, that's that was a choice, right?
That was a choice. Not a smart one for a lizard though.
Nope. Not a lot of lizards in Boston, I don't think.
Nope.
I could probably go in my backyard and find one right now. They're in my garage sometimes.
Where is Mike Brown here? He's not here yet. He's in Texas. There's a lizard that I would be. It's the Texas horned lizard. I used to catch them as a child and I love them. That's what kind of lizard I would be.
Used to visit the Outer Banks, and they would have little geckos all over, climbing on mailboxes or around buildings or something like that.
At my mother-in-law's condo in Florida, they're everywhere. These little lizards all over the
They're
place.
great. Yeah. Of the kinds of critters to have. They're kind of fun critters to have.
They are. They're helpful.
And they eat
All right.
bugs.
Yum.
Make all the bugs go away.
And they're cute.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have a whole lot to chat about today, so I'm happy Jeff's around because at least he threw something out there.
I have so many other ideas I can put on here if we're looking to fill time.
Well,
Yeah,
we will find out
careful
in
what you
about
wish for,
5 minutes.
Brandon.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, we
All right.
segued from lizards to bugs, and that's a perfect topic for OCI, right?
Apparently. And Brian, I'll say I did not hear any fire alarm testing there, so I think you're safe. Alrighty. So, yeah, as mentioned, we don't have a lot in there. A couple of conformance things are still sitting around until we get some maintainers review it. I'm not expecting it to go fast, but I'm just keeping on everybody's radar that, hey, by the way, that stuff is still sitting out there looking for review. And Jeff's got his tag history one out there looking for review as well, but I think that's getting preempted by the change to extensions, right, Jeff?
Yeah, I need to go back and update that off of some comments, but I was waiting until we looked at the extension one first.
Yeah. And I was looking at this just while we're getting ready to kick the meeting off today, and the one thing I realized is because we said that, hey, this is an example potential extension down here, we lost the underscore. Because the underscore was kind of, hey, that's a fixed value in this string that you must follow this syntax. When we no longer say you must follow the syntax, we need to redefine the underscore.
Um, I'll blame someone for that. That's not myself. Somehow
Yeah.
Tianan caused it. No, it wasn't Tianan. I don't know. John? Steve-O? Steve-O did this.
And yeah, maybe rework this note down here that says the leading underscore is a prefix before and all this stuff. Well, that's talking about the regular expression. So we might need to rework that a little bit. But yeah, I think we just need to say that, hey, their extensions must be unique, yada, 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 and they are specified by having a leading underscore. Once you see that, you're no longer in OCI land, you're in extension land. Extension to OCI land.
So I'm looking at what are you saying is missing? The leading, what?
So originally we said that, hey, you define this thing and here's what it looks like. And we said, here's the exact string and the extension field here and the component and the module were all defined and here's how it all went together in a string. And that string had a leading underscore. But now that we said, here's an example of potential extension, we no longer said the underscore is a required prefix.
Got it. Okay. Nope. I I can add a line about that.
Yeah, so I think we just need
I
to,
thought that there was another thing farther up that mentioned that, but there's not.
yeah, that's kind of where I was going. I was looking at this before the meeting. I'm thinking, okay, nothing up top we really specify. We say that, hey, underscore OCI is the thing. They have to be unique. And they specify that. But yeah, we need a little leading thing there that extensions are all defined by having a prefix of an underscore. Not difficult, but oops. All right, that was the entire meeting. What else you guys got? Guys, gals, gents, everybody.
I have a implementation related question if you guys don't mind me asking.
Jump in. We got time.
Yeah, so I was just wondering how, like, does OCI has any opinion about how duplicates should be handled for the 512 SHA digest algorithm implementation?
Are you saying a hash collision or are you saying someone pushes with both 512 and 256?
The latter.
Okay. In my own implementation, they're treated as two separate hash spaces. So I don't deduplicate between the two, but that's an implementation decision, not a spec decision.
I see. So individual implementer can decide differently.
I don't think we have anything in the spec that says otherwise, but folks can jump in and interrupt me.
Is the question there whether it's safe to just like map one hash to the other?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that's implementation specific.
Yeah, because like also like I'm assuming like we are not going to support like if you give us 512, you are not like by default you're not getting 256. That's an OCI decision, right? So if you give us 512, you should get back 512, and if you ask for 256, you're not getting anything.
Should be a keyword there.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's one thing I was thinking recently when working on this. Like,
Is the I'm just curious there from like a registry perspective. Is the assumption there like if you wanted to support that, would you would just always calculate and store, say, both hashes, and so whichever one you ask for, or like because if yeah, I guess besides like automatically deduplicating, you
mhm.
know, you wouldn't you wouldn't just like return a SHA-256 for something that was uploaded as SHA-512 unless something was pushed with that SHA-256. But I guess you could in the background just like always map to it. So it's like it's
Correct. Yeah.
there even though it was never pushed. I mean, you that seems perfectly safe to me to do within the scope of a repository, and like getting one version for free.
Yeah, so the problem then becomes like if you are getting one version for free, then why not, let's say, 384, right? So like we are now at that point, like if we are because if we are mapping 256 and 512, then the expectation would be like if I'm uploading 512, I'm getting 256 for free. Then why not 384?
I,
Now, yeah.
I think there's a difference there between the registry is free to do it. The spec doesn't specify, but I would say there's definitely no assumption about what you should and should not be given. I would say the only assumption is if I push 512, you're storing it as 512 and I can get it. Actually, I don't think the assumption even says how you store it. The assumption is if I push it as 512, I can pull it back as 512. If a registry also lets me pull it back by 256 because it's mapping it that way, then great, that's a bonus, but nothing in the spec says you should or must or anything about that. The only thing in the spec is if you push it as 256, I can pull it as 256. If I push it as 512, I can pull it as 512. Any additional mapping is a bonus thing a registry is opting in for, nothing that the client should expect.
I see. So the registry is not saying that, like we are not enforcing that. So I mean, the OCI is not saying that if you do 512, like you may get 256. We're not saying that.
Nope, that is purely a implementation detail on how a registry chooses to store it on the back end. The only thing here is it is saying if you push it under one, you can reference it by that same thing.
Okay. Okay. Um,
Yeah, and I would say the other aspect of that is because normally the hash verification is done like on push of the manifest.
mhm.
So you can have that SHA-256 there even though it's not being used, or you could have the SHA-512 there even though it's not being used, but technically it wouldn't be referenced until you have a manifest that's pushed up with it. So I think the runtimes will normally check to say, hey, registry, do you have for every blob before you push a manifest, you're going to check to see is this available on the registry? And if it's available, as long as it's there and the registry can like verify it when the manifest comes through, then it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's kind of the same as if you just like pulled, like you have registries that maybe act as like a proxy cache for another registry. It's kind of the same thing. It can get that digest from anywhere. It's content addressable, so it doesn't really matter.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Um, Thanks. I think that's what I was just curious, like how there's a thinking about it because yeah, there's like the pros and cons for both.
Yeah, I don't know if
Especially
anybody's doing that, but I mean, it does make sense. Like, if you want to support SHA-512, like compute both and just always store it as 512 or something. Assuming that you think 512 is more secure than 256, probably doesn't really matter. But I don't know. Some people
yeah,
say like don't store it the other way.
yeah, I don't know like why would at least like in the like storage perspective, why would SHA-256 5 SHA-512 would be more secure than it just the hash calculation, right?
I mean, yeah, that'd be a pretty big deal to have that hash collision, even across the domains. I don't think that that's a concern.
Yeah, cool.
So when you first asked the question, I was thinking, are we talking about a hash collision on SHA-512, or are you asking about 512 versus 256 together? And
Yeah.
because if you're concerned about a hash collision on the SHA-512,
No, no, I don't.
that's much less of an issue than we've got already today.
Yeah. No, I was just wondering, like, because when I was thinking about the implementation details, and I realized like we are having the two like stored would be like a big cost, right? Like if we are storing both digest. Uh, yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah. I think you
I'm
have to weigh the storage on your side of what does it cost for you to compute both compute-wise and store both database-wise
Yeah.
versus store both blobs separately should anyone actually push them separately with different algorithms. There's a trade-off there.
Yeah. So the thought process was, let's say most people, even though they use, let's say like my company has a use case only, I only use AMD 64, but I tend to like the push like all available architecture, right? So the thinking was like if a customer always pushes like all available algorithms, but eventually only use one or like yeah, let's say like most probably they will only be using one. So the idea is in that case, as a registry, we would be like spending cost for storage for all three different algorithms versus if we were mapping one to all three, then the storage cost remains minimal, but then we are spending like more database rows, but I think that's probably fine compared to paying for S3 or like object storage. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be a registry implementation decision there, just thinking of how many customers are actually going to be doing that. Because it's not just per object. You would have to rebuild the manifest to be a SHA-512, and that would be a new manifest at that point.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean the hashing is also a completely different discussion from the architecture as well. That's two separate concepts.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was
I,
saying like as in terms of like if customers chooses to always store in multiple hashing, uh, like then like if we support three, then at least like there are like three times of a storage. I'm talking about like the blob storage, so there are like three
yeah.
times.
I mean, they would have to theoretically push the blob 3 times unless you're just going to let them
Right.
dynamically discover. They push it once, and then it's there for the next 2 times. So they would have to do that push. But then they also have to rebuild the manifest for the image and the manifest for the index because all the descriptors are going to change when you change the digest algorithm.
Yeah.
So each of those are going to be unique. And so you're going to have 3 unique manifests
Yeah.
since they contain different descriptors.
Is
And so each of those would have to have either maybe show up in an index with something in there to differentiate them, or they're going to be 3 separate tags at that point.
out of curiosity, Brandon. So I mean I think up until this point we've been treating the SHA-512 thing as more of a theoretical case where we want to make sure that registries at least support it. Um, I'm not aware of any actual tooling that will build SHA-512 by default. I think all the ones I've seen are all like handcrafted by you or Tianan or someone else just playing around. Like, are there actually any build tools that will like straight build an image?
Straight build an image, I don't know if BuildKit allows you to change that or not, but after the fact, once you've already built it, Regcuddle image mod, conveniently, I know this one, um, does let you change the digest algorithm in there. So you can tweak this and say, give me a SHA-512 or a SHA-256. I don't have any other algorithms in there yet. but you can say that and it'll flip all of the digest algorithms for pushing the manifest, for pushing the blobs, all of those get redone.
Yeah. Well, I guess my point being that like there's certainly tooling that will do it if you sort of manually go in there and modify it or but like this isn't I'm not aware of any sort of happy path thing that a customer is going to accidentally fall into multiple hashing algorithms unless they're explicitly going out of their way to do so.
Yeah, this right here is definitely an explicit go out of your way to prove something works. If you were to start building images like that, I think you're also probably going to end up to start with a mixed scenario, unless you want to change your base image layers. Because I feel like for efficiency, you probably want to keep your base image layers the same digest algorithm that they came from the base image. And unless they rebuild their base images, you're going to have the Alpine layers as SHA-256, and then whatever you build on top of that, SHA-512, and so you'll have a mix inside the same manifest. That's my expectation. I feel like they would go that direction rather than rebuilding the image and universally changing the algorithm across everything. But someone can prove me wrong.
Can you say that again, like when you say like rebuilding the image?
So the tool that I was pointing out here is Regcuddle Image Mod. It modifies an entire image. You tweak it after the fact. And so this would rehash the entire image, rebuild all the manifests and all that stuff, and push the thing from scratch. My suspicion from Jeff's comment was if a tool is going to do this out of the box and design it right, it's probably going to retain the base image layer hashes, I suspect. And so even in those cases, you're not going to see them do the complete change on day one. It's going to be the base image layers are going to have one algorithm, and then the new layers that you add on top of it are going to have the other algorithm.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, to Derek's question, I think I don't know. I think that at least for our in our case, I don't think it's the security yet. It's I think OCI if OCI has it implemented.
I mean, I think we're having these discussions with a expectation that this could be an issue in the future, not that it's one today. Like
Right.
I don't think that anybody should rehash images from 256 to 512. I think that's just causing pain upon yourself for absolutely no reason. But there are more modern algorithms out there that could make sense, but I don't think that there's consensus across the industry to move to them. So it's kind of in a weird state. If suddenly there was like consensus because there was some fear about the weakness of SHA-2, then I don't think that the answer is going to be to go from 256 to 512 because out of if SHA-2 is considered weaker, considerably weaker than some of these other algorithms, then it's going to be switching to like Blake 3 or SHA-3 or something else. But I think it takes like decades for those to become seriously considered. Yeah. I think that's just about being able to support it rather than saying that 512 is the future.
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind
Yeah.
of what the motivation I also see. Yeah.
At this point, I think it's still new enough that anybody that's starting to push stuff in SHA-512 is probably going to find a lot of things breaking. So we're just paving the
I
road
would,
so that it can be driven on later on.
but I think we shouldn't we should also be careful to keep those conversations here and not confuse users into thinking they should move to 512.
But to your comment on security theater, I have heard people comment that they're worried about SHA-256 in context with the quantum safe.
Yeah, but I'm saying it's security theater to say SHA 256 is not safe, but SHA 512 is. Like they're the same algorithm.
Same algorithm, but twice the number of bits you're keeping, right?
Yeah, but if that's hardly a change from like a quantum computing perspective. Like if as I said, it's more if SHA-2 is going to be considered weak, then we're going to be switching to something else. But there's no consensus on what's after SHA-2, or at least that's my perspective. I haven't
Yeah.
seen any sort of consensus as here's the next thing.
Yeah. And I don't know the internals of all the quantum stuff enough to say one way or another, but doubling number of bits isn't doubling the problem. It's making the problem 2 to the 256 times more difficult, I would think.
I mean, yeah, quantum computing, once those computers actually exist, if they ever will, I mean, maybe, they're going to come after fusion power plants probably, but so maybe don't worry about it then.
Hopefully, you're not going to worry about my little image sitting out there
It's
on a
20, it's
Docker
20
hub.
years. Yeah. It's always 20 years away.
I thought there is a new funding that got released today for quantum computing.
I mean, maybe AI is going to find a weakness in SHA-2. Who knows? But I think my point was more if SHA-2 is considered weak, then I think 512 or 256 to 512 is pointless.
Yeah, the main context I've seen 512 seriously considered in is government compliance.
Which
Checking the
loves security
box.
theater. So
Yes, they
that's
sure do. Yeah, sorry, that to be clear, that was backing up what you're saying, not
yeah.
contradicting it. I agree
Yeah.
with you completely. Uh, I think SHA-512 is pointless. SHA-256 is still generally considered to be quantum resistant.
But SHA-512 has an extra 256 points.
Yeah, that sounds like someone who's not a cryptographer.
It's twice the number of points.
Yeah,
It's 2 to the 256 more complex.
it
Yeah.
sure is.
So when you are saying security, so are we worried about the collision? Like what are we worried about here with quantum computing?
Um, the best that I can interpret is someone's afraid that someone will be able to create a hash collision with malicious content having the same hash as the original content.
Yeah, generally, how trivial is it to create malicious content that has the same hash as legitimate content so that you can do a swap attack?
I see. Yeah.
And right now, the consensus is that's not going to be trivial anytime soon unless someone legitimately breaks SHA-2, which isn't going to be changed meaningfully by quantum or not quantum. If someone finds a
Yeah.
SHA-2 break, they're going to find a SHA-2 break and it's going to break all of SHA-2.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But
But
if they
nobody
find a
feels.
collision,
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, if they find a collision, they not only have to find the matching hash, but they have to find the matching size as well. So they can't resize it for most implementations.
That's probably trivial though. Um, no, I was just gonna say for like the what comes after, if SHA-2 breaks, then nobody's gonna feel good about SHA-3 and every other algorithm out there. So yeah, that's a tricky one. But I do think that, it takes at least a decade to build any level of confidence on these new hash algorithms.
I feel like if SHA-2 breaks or some of these other things go on, that'd be a really good time to start taking up woodworking.
Dude, we're gonna have to do that anyways. Oh, wait, Brandon, you're retired. Are you not already doing woodworking or
Getting there.
boating? Yeah. We're all gonna be doing woodworking in a few years anyways. Yeah, it doesn't sound bad. It's not like a
Al
punishment to have to go do woodworking. It's like
Alpaca farming,
it's smoking.
we'll
Yeah.
find something.
Thanks so much for the discussion, guys.
Sorry for derailing at the end there.
No, no, I think woodworking sounds great. Yeah.
All right, folks. Anything else you want to chat about this week?
I'll hijack it again with my previous topic from last week once we're at the
Do
end.
it.
Okay.
Do it.
I pushed a update. This is a draft for the Aerofest stuff. Um, so had a nice cleanup, I would say. Um, the thing I think is most relevant to this group is the interpretation of the diff IDs. And I'm not sure how well there's the interpretation that's basically the most similar to what the image spec does today, which is the diff IDs are just take the layers, take the uncompressed version, and those are the diff IDs. Um, the problem is as soon as you want to do lazy loadings, one of the things this thing is introducing is the index. Um, how do you ensure that the ID space that you're using or that the diff ID is covering today is actually covered um, by the index? So I think a lot of the lazy loading solutions kind of gloss over this today, in that they don't bother to have um, the index of or sorry, the hash of the index be part of the diff ID. So basically you just have a mapping that says like, okay, well, this thing should be the same thing as that thing. I didn't actually check the sequential hash because you'd have to pull all the data down. Um, so the solution to that is where you would use the diff ID, replace the diff ID with the index that you're using, and then you're going to check the hash of the index. So you have the full Merkle verification all the way down to disk. And that's uh, from the Merkle perspective, at least in Containerd, we try to well, I guess just in generally with the way the image config is defined is that it's actually a Merkle tree all the way down to what's stored on disk because the diff IDs represent a hash that's been verified as it goes as you're unpacking something onto disk. Now, you lose that in tar today because once you put it onto disk, you don't know what happens. With Aerofest, it's a little bit safer because you can run that directly, and you can include the DM Verity data as part of that as well. So if you have the DM Verity data inside of the scope of that chunk index, that's what we call it, then you basically have full verification to when that page is loaded in the kernel, from the Merkle tree perspective. Um, so the difficulty there is I think the diff IDs shouldn't change. They should always just be the sequential hash. And what I did, or what I'm proposing there is adding a field next to diff IDs that looks basically like the layers field in the manifest. But it's only the hash of the component that gets used. So it's either the uncompressed tar, or it could be um, the actual chunk index. But unlike diff IDs, which are just hashes, and you're left to guess what that hash means. Um, use actual descriptors in that list. So I think it would be a general improvement over what we have in diff IDs today in the config, where it's just like, here's a digest, like, hope you can find something that matches it, to here's the actual list of uh, components that are in that in that rootfs, the calculation for the chain ID could be kind of the same process, but at least I think having that media type is helpful. I use way too many words to try to describe it. It's the rootfs.components, as you see on screen, is the
Yeah.
part that I was just like, this feels weird to me, but
I want to channel my inner TNon and just be like, can't we get rid of this?
diff IDs
Yeah.
altogether.
Yeah. Just nuke them.
You could ignore the diff
But
IDs. You could ignore all of this by simply moving the referenced hash up one level. The only reason we had this today is because image IDs referring to the config. In Kubernetes, well, I don't know if that's a really Kubernetes thing or that's just like a CRI thing in Containerd, but there are a few cases that use the actually use
the config digest.
the config digest to refer to the ID of the image for a runnable container. And I think
So
yeah,
so in those cases, you just need something unique. The diff ID just has to be something unique
um, it
for that
should
purpose.
be, yeah. I mean, it certainly should be unique. Um, I mean, it should be unique, but it's like it needs to be cryptographically unique because you don't
Yeah.
want like, yeah. Well,
Not randomly unique, but
we
some
just
kind of
talked about
content
hash
addressable.
collisions, but yeah, the better
Yeah.
way to create collisions is by just like not putting the necessary stuff into the hash in the first place. That's the easier
So
way to generate a collision. Just
solved all problems.
yeah.
But
Um,
yeah, either we remove the requirement that the config ID is unique, or you know, content address. The config ID is content addressable for the config, but make it the config is no longer the unique thing. It's the manifest that needs to be unique.
yeah.
Or if we're stuck with requirement that the config ID is still uniquely referencing the image, then I don't know how much we have to go through all this. I haven't read all this, so I
Yeah.
can't really say. But
I mean,
all it needs to have is some kind of content addressable string in there that we're pointing to.
yeah. Or if you're not using the config ID as the unique ID for the container, or sorry, for the image, then it doesn't need to be unique at all.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
cryptographically
Then we can
unique.
completely nuke this,
Yeah, then we could completely
which,
nuke it.
which I think there would be much rejoicing if that happened.
I can think about that, whether or not I think from a containerd perspective, it doesn't matter too much. I know historically, like when I say historically, I mean like within the Docker engine, the problem was like we didn't actually have the manifests until we go to push. So
Hmm.
like everything was using the config ID
And
or the
a lot of the structure in Docker predates the existence of manifests
it does.
and
And
hasn't.
the reason we
It,
added the diff IDs in the first place was because we had a huge cache poisoning issue in the early days.
Yeah.
And um, so we didn't have a manifest and we had a huge cache poisoning problem. So the diff IDs were the solution to that. Um, if, yeah, I can think about that some. I mean, I'll keep this in here, but when I go to do the containerd implementation, I can just see about just nuking that requirement completely, and then I can just remove it from the draft. I'm trying to have the draft like more like complete, but also like we can rip shit out if we need to, rather than like oh shoot, like this is an important thing that we don't have. Um,
Off the cuff gut check here. I haven't looked at this more than just reviewing your PR while you were talking about it just now. It feels weird to write a new image spec that still includes diff IDs.
That's fair. I think that's fair. Well, this isn't, as I said, I'm not trying to create a new image spec. It's mostly just media types. And I think it's probably in the README. It's like this is the only real change to the image spec. And that's why I was saying it's probably the most relevant here. But even getting rid of diff IDs is kind of a change. I mean, that'd be a change to the image spec as well. Probably more, well, just either way. I'm not trying to create a new config ID here. It's more something that's optional. And so I was thinking of keeping the diff IDs for compatibility is basically the exact same. But adding a component that could have that, but just not adding it completely and then just making the diff IDs ignorable, maybe that's fine as well. And that's just in containerd, we'll just need to make sure that we're using the manifest digest wherever possible. And I think
This
CRI is the only place that's not using it today.
this feels like a big enough change you're pushing through and stuff's gonna get rewritten to support it that in that whole process, nuking the diff ID might be minimal compared to everything else.
Yeah, the whole concept of image ID is definitely a legacy concept.
Oh yeah, I mean, I hate image ID
Yeah,
in general,
I
but
think only Docker ever actually cared about it.
yeah, but CRI inherited it because of that.
Oh,
But I don't know how much of that
but
gets
nope,
exposed up to the kubelet, but
nobody uses CRI, right?
eh,
If only.
yeah. Well, not directly, probably. Yeah, I'm not. I'd have to look into that of how that image ID actually gets bubbled up
Yeah,
through
I
CRI.
wonder if CRI would break if you just said for this CRI implementation, image ID is manifest digest and CRI just doesn't know the difference. Because it probably treats the image ID as an opaque identifier, I would hope.
Um,
If it
I
doesn't, that feels like a leak of the abstraction.
I want to say that's right, and I think that's true. I think the issue, and it just seems very like a non-issue, but we've had this exact issue um with Docker as well, where yes, the ID might not be like um the user doesn't know what the ID is, but they do know sometimes when it changes. And we've been going through this on kind of Docker switching to the containerd backend of just like users do notice when the ID of the image changes. I don't know what tooling they're using that does that, but they're they do notice when the ID changes, like between versions and stuff like I had this ID and then I like updated containerd or Docker and then like now the ID is something different, you know. And our response is like, well, it's the same thing, it's just a different ID. And I think there was that same thing in the early days of CRI containerd where users were like switching from Docker to CRI containerd and they're like, oh, like this is using the wrong image. I'm expecting to this exact image ID. And it's like, no, it's the same thing. I feel like it was something that was shoehorned into CRI after because there's like a very specific like ID mapping. Um, and like the short ID mapping even was like those 12 character versions. So I can look back through it. But I mean, yeah, I think that's a very valid point of like maybe just don't worry about it and solve it at the higher level. It'll be simpler, the simpler approach.
I mean, if you're gonna break it, just go all in.
I guess the thing is, yeah, I, I don't mind breaking things, but I only like to break a limited number of things at once. More like a constant stream of breaking.
So not like me in the conformist test change.
Just break it all, break everything.
I'll be the Oprah of breakage. You get a breakage and you get a breakage.
Yeah, I think that's just something, well, even the diff IDs in containerd today, they're not like, we just use it as like a ID space, but there is a problem within, yeah, I guess the simple solution would just be just put the uncompressed, if it's compressed and you have the uncompressed digest, just put that as an annotation in the image or in the descriptor.
100% yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that would basically solve everything, huh?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it-
Imagine having a config that is actually just config. That'd be so cool.
And when you think of what you're breaking with this and having rootfs have some new data in there, I'm pretty sure that that's one of the places that broke when I tried doing my SHA-512 testing. Is tools were looking at the rootfs and was expecting a SHA-256 inside the rootfs.
Oh, and you put some SHA-512 diff IDs? Of course you
Yep,
did. Thank
I
you.
changed them all, baby.
That's so funny. Explosive.
I
we're
went for
probably
broke. I
guilty of
changed
that.
everything.
Yeah. We're probably guilty of that on containerd too. Just
Yeah,
using canonical. Yeah.
yeah, and something in there was canonically looking for the SHA digest, and it was like this diff ID doesn't match the diff ID I thought I was supposed to have, and yeah. So when you think of things you're going to break by introducing a new thing, this is definitely going to break something. And so if you're going to break it, why not delete it?
Yeah, I've poked around SHA-512 and containerd, but only in the content and image stores. I haven't really tested beyond that much.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna have to be significant changes to the unpacker here anyways, so it might not be a huge thing. We only use the diff IDs in containerd to, well, I guess it's significant because we use the diff IDs to generate the snapshot IDs. But how we calculate it, I mean, you're not saying diff IDs are pointless, you're just saying the rootfs is pointless, right?
Yeah,
Or you
I'm
don't
saying
like
ditch the
the
entire
idea.
rootfs structure entirely and like TNON, make the config just a config and doesn't have to be
Yeah.
unique at that point.
Yeah, how do I run this image, or what parameters do I put on the container when I run this image, not what is this image?
That
What's
said,
in this image?
you still have a history in there, so you're still going to have some stuff that some
But
part of that abstraction that trickles up.
history would make more sense as annotations on the layers also.
Indeed.
If you went all in on the OCI data model, history only exists in the config as a historical place. Like that's where
Sure
it
way to find
landed
him.
because that's where it lived historically, not because that's where it makes sense in the data model. The
Shall we
way
make a
that
new
these things
annotation?
work,
Let's do it.
annotations on layers is the appropriate place for history data.
Count me in. Let's do it. Let's make a
Yeah.
new annotation.
Yep. Start
Or
with progressive enhancement and
you know
eventually
it's
rip off the band-aid.
you know it's an even better place for it? Refers.
Oh, geez.
Why
So it takes a whole nother round trip to get
do you need it? We don't need it. We don't even look at it.
the
I
history.
mean, no
Well,
one
we
looks at the
don't, the
annotations either,
runtime
but we
doesn't
still
look at
have them.
it. Yeah.
I read it all the time. I type Docker history all the time.
Yeah, I get it from refers. Nah. Half joking. I mean, it's the same as I think there's a point there though that like the history should almost be something that's more like the provenance, more tied to like the the provenance and other stuff that you might put in refers. I don't know what people actually put in there, but it just feels like the same thing to me.
I just say Brandon was here. That's my entire history.
I mean, I'm in the everything we should just squash stuff down camp. So my history would be squashed, and that's it. Well, there you go.
Yeah, see, Tina and I are the same. I have Reg Client was here. You have Yumochi was here.
All right, yeah, that's what I wanted to bring up. But yeah, that's it. I mean, folks are free to comment on that and say whatever you want on it. I am trying to get I mean, my goal is to get an implementation in around the Containerd 2.4 time frame, but much earlier than that for some prototypes and stuff. But yeah, I'll look into that. Like, yeah, I think all opinions are welcome about how to deal with that. And ripping stuff out is I do like that. I like simplicity. If we can rip something out, then I'm not going to advocate for it. I think we already like in the latest version, it already simplified a bit. We're just using the existing IANA registered AeroFS media type, which makes it cleaner, I think.
I like it.
Yeah, you know, we only
And
have
I'm,
like one registered media type with IANA. It's like Steve Lasker registered like I forget which one, but it's only like one of them. If you go on there, it's just like one OCI media type. Really plain favorites.
we keep telling people they should do it, and none of us wants to do it.
Yeah. I don't know how that ownership process is, but Shangao did it for AeroFS, I guess, and knows how to update it.
Like, if someone else wants to do it for their stuff, fantastic. All right. Anything else for this week? Sounds like folks want another 5 minutes back. And yeah, I didn't get to read your PR. I was too busy looking at the sunset last weekend, so I was having too much fun bobbing around the boat. But we will be back next week. Same bad time, same bad channel. For those in the US, have a great holiday weekend, and we will see you again next time.
Bye.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Jeff!